Hello one and all, Richard Piper here, aka Pipes, and I'd like to welcome you all to this video, which I like to call Substance Snippet. So really what it is, it's an overview video of things that I'm currently working on in Substance Designer and Substance Painter, anything algorithmic really, about my texturing procedure and how I'm trying to see if it's possible to create procedural height maps, normal maps, and also do texturing all within Substance Designer and Substance Painter, and without using ZBrush or Photoshop or anything like that. Still love ZBrush and still love Photoshop and everything, but I just want to see if it's possible what we can actually do within Substance Designer and Painter, just using this as a standpoint. So recently, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you probably see I put a lot of pictures up and development what I'm doing within Substance, and this is something I was working on last week, and it's a tiling brick generator. So what I'm trying to achieve here is obviously trying to make brick walls, stone walls within Substance Designer, but try to get rid of the procedural look, the computer generated look, because normally you go into ZBrush and you'd model each brick and you'd put all the small details, find cracks in and everything, edge damage and whatnot. What I'm trying to do now is do that procedurally, but make it look like it's not procedural. Now, it sounds it probably sounds tricky, and it is tricky, but using Substance Designer, I think getting somewhere now to getting it a lot less procedural looking than it used to look a while ago, and that's through help from a lot of Naughty Dog artists. I know that they use this technique a lot, same as Rogelio's, also on a blog with me at the moment. It's his blog and I'm helping him with some content on there, which I'll put some links up in a while. And yeah, so really what I want to do is go through how to create the base height map and normal map for these stones, for these bricks. So as you can see at the minute, the graph looks a bit crazy, but it's not when we actually break it down. So at the moment all I've got here is just a normal map and an albedo map. I've not got any roughness or metalness map or anything like that at the moment, because if I go to materials and go to shader, I'm just using a tessellation shader at the moment, so I'm not having to plug in anything, because that's where the physical base shader is there. So the way that it's split up is this part here. This is your generator, so that's generating the actual height map itself and the normal map. So if I click on here, you can see this is the normal map. Just click this small button and there we go. So this is the normal map that's been generated through this section, and then using the section there, I can start to create the base colors. So again, there's absolutely no photo reference or anything like that. It's all just completely created using generators such as fractal sums, Perlin noise, and going through and just blending in lots of different colors. I mean, if you look at this one here, this is a gradient map, so if you can see on the right hand side, you can see all these different colors that you do find within brick and stone and things. I mean, you wouldn't think there'd be kind of like these sort of greens in there or these blues, but there are, because if you do sample down an image of a brick wall, you'll find there's so many different tones that make up the actual colour of the bricks. It's quite crazy when you actually look at it. And as you can see here, I'm blending this gradient map in with just a uniform colour, so that's kind of like my brick base kind of colour. So then as I go along, it's just a case of just blending in and experimenting with all different things. I've got some white noise and a histogram scan, Perlin noise zoom, and then a slope blur, and I'm going into, if I double click on each one of these nodes, you can change the intensity, and as you can see it's changing as I move that. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but you can actually see it changing on the wall. See if I zoom in a little bit, there you go. So you can see I'm adding in all these different kinds of tones to try and make that kind of painterly, hand-painted look, but try and make it kind of more realistic as well. So I mean, there's some crazy colours going on. I mean, there's these sorts of tones, and this is a transform 2D node where I can actually zoom in and out. You can probably see it changing again, the size of the actual colours. That's getting blended into here. These HSLs are hue saturation and lightness, as you can see there, so I can change the saturation of certain key aspects to the tones, so I can try different things. And again, this is just all being continually blended in. So where's this one coming from? So this one is coming down here. I mean, I have to keep looking. So this is where the base bricks actually start. I'll look at that in a second. Just thought I'd just show you this quickly. So we've got the inverting grayscale, blending things in, mixing in a fractal sum there, which then using a histogram scan, which is an awesome node. I'll show you that in a while as well. I'm then using that as a mask going into the opacity slot here, and then I'm blending these in. So along the way you can see, I mean, perfect for an albedo map, absolutely no shadows or anything like that, because we're not using any reference photography. So we've gone from that point there. So now we're starting to add in the actual grout at that point. Then we've got some damage colours going in there, because if you zoom in you can see there's certain parts where it's kind of damaged and things like that. In fact, I think it's here, you can sort of just see it there. So that's a different colour as well. That's blending into there. Yeah, you can see it getting added on there. Then I've got the grout colour, so now I'm going to start to add more colorization into the grout itself. So if I double click that, you can see that's the blend of the grout, but when I double click here you can see that it's just adding it into the section there. I've got large stones colour, because inside the grout we've even got these larger stones which are all procedural as well, so I can increase the amount, decrease the amount if required. And then I've just got an ambient occlusion, which I always remove before export, because your albedo map doesn't want to have any shadow information in there at all. So I just plug that in sometimes just to see what it would look like once the ambient occlusion is overlaid. So that's the part of the actual colorization of it, and the roughness would just be the same. Just going to start taking out key aspects from the main brick color, adding different roughness values, see what it looks like, changing the material into a physically based material. But the great thing is, once you've got this base generator here, you can really then use that as within a new graph, and then just take the outputs from it and start to do this colorization. So as you can see, it might take a while to set up the first generator, but once you've set up that first generator, you've got that in your library, then it's super quick, and then you can just start going in and messing around and trying different colors. So in a production environment it's really fast. You don't have to go and start sculpting brand new bricks and things. So let's have a look at the actual generator itself. So this is what I will bring in. This is where your graphs are. These are your substances here. So that's the substance there, that's the one that's got the colorization, and this one I've just separated it out just so that we can have a look. And as you can see now, within the 3D view, this is just using the normal map, and there's also a height map in there as well, but that's the normal. And this is just completely being generated. There's no sculpting, nothing like that. It's just being completely generated from here. So best thing to do is break it up into sections so that you know what you're trying to achieve with each part when you're overlaying this on top of your generator. So you'd start off with, for example here, this is the base bricks. Now to find the bricks, it's really simple. Just go in here, just type in brick. You can see you've got a brick 1, brick 2, 3 and a brick generator. Now for this one I'm using 3 different types of bricks, but I'm only using one at a time. So this is brick 3. If I double click this, you can see I can change the roundness value of the bricks. I can change luminance variation, so that's going to give you different depth on each brick. I can either have it where it's all white so they'll all be the same height, or I can start to pull this up, and where it's going darker they'll be more sunken into the actual texture itself, into the height map and the normal map. So that gives you great variation, and then you can do random positions as well, so you can see it changing. And also what you can do is expose these parameters so that you don't have to go into here to change things. You can change them from a new substance, just drag in this one into the new substance, and then as long as you expose these parameters, you'll be able to then just change these values on the fly. Because if you right click and go expose parameters, you can expose the roundness, the luminance, the random position disorder. As you can see, it all ties into this. So if I, at a higher level, if I brought this into a different substance and I just want to change the roundness, I'd tick that, give it a graph input name, and then when you go to the new substance, which has nothing in it, you drag this one in, just with the outputs, you'll be able to just have one slider for roundness, and you'll be able to change that on the fly. There's a great tutorial on there that Rogelio did before, looking at substance topology part 2. So take a look at that, and he goes through how you do all the exposure. What I've got here is a multi-switch grayscale. Now what this multi-switch grayscale does, it allows you to input 3 different grayscale images into there and then choose on the fly which one you want. So at the minute we're loading into input 1, so you can see input switches at 1. There's 3 input numbers. You can clamp these down. See, if we've only got 3, you only need to show 3 input numbers, but I haven't done that for this one yet. So I'm going to go to input switch, I'm going to change it to number 2, and you can see the bricks just go straight away, just really quick. So now you can see what possibilities we've got here. So this is now using this brick generator, which is the brick generator there, and these are all the information you need. Bricks, 4 bricks, look, even more, making it smaller, or I can bring it back to where it was. So as you can see now, we've now got the speed of changing the brick size as well, so we don't have to go into ZBrush and then make different size bricks and then create another normal map. We can do it extremely quickly. This is brick 2, so this is another variant, ones with longer ones. So this is the parameters for brick 2. If I double click on the actual multi-switch grayscale, change the input to 3, there we go, look, now we've changed it to that. Now I'm sure you can see the benefit of that. I mean, it's just absolutely awesome. Before, I used to have to go in and make all different variants in ZBrush. It took me ages. In fact, it now takes longer to make the actual sculpts in ZBrush if I was making this brick wall in there than it is to texture it. So things are really turning round. Now, what I'm going from here is, so let's go back to say the first one again. So I'm going to go back to the first bricks. So what I've got going on here is I've got this clouds 3. These can be found under noises. So there we go. Where are we? Clouds 3. You just left click, hold that, and drag a copy in, and then you can pull out from there. So what this is doing is clouds 3. This is being used as a mask. So where it's white, you will have a opacity, and where it's black, it's going to be translucent, and that's going into this directional warp. Now all these nodes, this node can be found by hitting the space bar, and it's there, directional warp. You click that and then it gives you this node. So then we've got the directional warp. So the clouds is going in there as you can see, it says intensity input. So where it's white it'll be intense, where it's black it's not. And then go into there and watch what I can do here. If I go into here and pull this down, you can see we're getting rid of some of the edge damage. Pull it back. I can even start to change the angle of the damage as well. So what we're trying to do with this directional warp is we're trying to break up the actual procedural feel of the actual bricks themselves, because normally if it was computer generated like this and it was just like all lots of squares and they were perfectly square, it just wouldn't look correct. It'd look generated, where what we're trying to do is break it up and make it look like it's hand sculpted. So what I've got going on here as well is I've got some damage large. Now the damage large is again some clouds, so clouds 2 this time. So we've got bigger forms going into a transformation node, and what that transformation node is doing, it's just offsetting. You can see where there's this square. I've got a slight rotation, so I can rotate it round, and I can see it changing on the actual mesh itself, on the cube, on the height map. So I'm just rotating that until I find something that's desirable. And again, if I right click and do expose parameters, I can expose that if I want to use it in another graph, and then just make sure the rotation, well, the transform matrix is shown. Now this node here, Histogram Scan, is awesome. So if I type in hist, you can see it's here, Histogram Scan. Now what this does, it kind of works on a position between whites and blacks. So if I pull the position down, you can see there's more black there than the white, so it's bringing in more of the noise, because that's how the blend is working. If I go to this blend, it's on subtract blending mode, and if I wish, I can pull this up and that starts to get rid of some of that damage. So that's a great parameter to actually expose at the top layer. Just expose the position and contrast, and then you can start to really change this damage on the fly. So if I pull this position up, you can see it's starting to disappear. If you want it to be reversed, you can click on the invert position, and then when you pull it up, it'll start to add more, just dependent on what you feel more comfortable with. So you've got contrast. So what the contrast is going to do, give it more of a sharper fall off rather than a blurred one, so that kind of gives you that damage. As you can see there, I've just changed it again. Now, so remember, Histogram Scan is an awesome node, and it's great for just having two control buttons rather than using the levels where you've got kind of like the histogram scan at the bottom, and you've also got sort of the mid-tones, low and high frequencies on there. So this is going into a blend node, and that blend node then is being inverted because I want it to actually dig in. So these white pieces here, I want them to be inverted so they'll dig inwards, so they'll go into the actual wall itself. And then that's blended into here. So if I double click, you can kind of just see it. I don't know if you can just there. It's very subtle in the height map because I don't want too much depth into the damage. Depends what scene you're working on. And that's going back into that directional warp. So from there I can control what type of brick, the directional, breaking up the edges of the actual bricks themselves, and adding in some large scale damage onto the fascia of the actual bricks. I've also got down here a small dint, so this is just more surface, smaller surface dints kind of here and here. That's using a grunge map, so the grunge map again, that's just under noises. Just scroll down to G and you've got all these different grunge maps. Great thing about Substance Designer is when you go in there, there's so much that you can kind of get involved with and kind of experiment, because I'm using this grunge map, but it's going to look different if I use this one or this one. So there's so many possibilities that you can actually, the different looks you can get. And this is the one program where you'll find you'll have more happy accidents than any other program, because the speed, you can just like drag things in and try things out, and sometimes they look good, and then sometimes you'll just accidentally do something and go, whoa, that's awesome. So you get a happy accident just straight out of there. Brilliant stuff. So here we go. So we've got a blend. So we're blending this with cells 1, which again is just another cells 1. We're blending those two together. We're using subtract, and we're changing opacity, so I can sort of change it. I don't know if you can see, it's very subtle, but on the mesh, watch if I can show you, you can see this is what these small dints are doing. Very subtle indeed. I'm inverting those as well because I want them to dig in, so I want them to go inwards, and then that is getting placed into this blend node. Okay, so that's going from there. So what have we got so far? We've got base bricks, we've got some damage large, and we've got some smaller dints. And now we've got a more aggressive edge damage, because the directional warp's okay, but once we overdrive it with this slope blur grayscale, so again, go into the library, type slope blur grayscale, this is going to overdrive the actual edge damage. And what I'm using here is a blend node as well to go from the basic bricks before they were all affected by directional warp. That's going into here. Oh no, it's not. Wait a minute. See, it's so confusing. There's that many things coming in and out. No, what that's doing there, from there, is these lines going across. I'm using these as masks so that I can just access the grout. So because this will be the cleanest variant from this point here, that's why I'm using it as a mask, and then I'm inverting the actual whites and blacks, so you see the whites and you can't see the black areas, and that's how I'm able to add in these larger grout stones. Okay, but I'll get there in a second. So we've got some edge damage going on here, and the way that this edge damage is working is I've got a blend node, so I'm doing the same thing as I did with the small dints. I've got these two. Now for example, if I click on this and press D on the keyboard, D for delta, you can see it actually collapses, so it just makes things a little smaller. So I mean, this is a work in progress. Every single substance generator I'm making is a work in progress, because you can always make it better or you can make it more efficient. So at this point, this is what this graph looks like. So if I press D on this one and D on that, you can see I'm using a fractal sunbase and I'm using a clouds 2 again. I'm blending them together, but this time I'm using a blend mode of min darken. So I'm using this one. Best way with this is just go through the blend mode, see which one looks best. Normally multiply, blend, minimum darken and things like that are the best ones. again, we're using the magical histogram scan, so we've got the position again, so I can change the amount of damage, and that's going into a slope blur grayscale. So I've ramped the samples up to 32. I've got a mode of min, again just experiment with this blur, min and max. So I've got min this time. Let me just pull this outwards, and if I increase the intensity, you'll start to see the edges start to really break up. So this is brilliant. So as you can see, I can really start to break into those bricks if I want. Say I was in a I don't know, cargo hold, and it's on the docks, and there's some bricks and they've been damaged throughout the ages, and you really want to ramp it up. Instead of having to make some separate bricks in ZBrush, we can just go in there, change the intensity of the actual edges of the bricks themselves, and it's really this histogram scan that's determining how sharp or what position amount that's going to be actually added. So as you can see, if I pull it this way, we get different amounts. Same with the contrast, that'll just sharpen it up, as you can see. So that's then being placed into the slope blur grayscale. That's a very useful node, the slope blur grayscale, especially for having kind of erosion going downwards in a vertical kind of fashion. Again, just play around with it and see what happens. So then that's where we go back to these small dints, and they're getting blended in then with the edge damage on the subtract and opacity. So you can always change the opacity to add different variation. And then what I've got going here is, let's have a look, fine grout. So this is the grout in between. I don't know if you can kind of see it there. You can start to see just a few little pieces. So how's this made up? Another clouds, another fractal sunbase. I could collapse them actually, like that. Save a bit of space. That's going into a blend node with minimum darken. I've also got here, which I did collapse, a transform 2D, and what we're doing with that. So with the transform 2D, we're actually rotating it. You can see it's currently, if you look at the damage there, it's going that way. I've actually just rotated it 90 degrees counterclockwise. So sometimes you want to rotate things just to get perhaps some better edging on some of the bricks sometimes where you want to put this fine grout. So for some reason it just looked better when I rotated it like that, in my opinion. Magical histogram scan again. Awesome stuff. Using a slope blur grayscale again, and this is really just to give a bit more variation into the actual noise itself, because what I'm trying to make here is kind of a noise. When the noise comes from white noise, which is again within the noises palette, where are we down here, white noise. So that's going in because I know that I want the grout to be quite fine pebbly kind of grout. Magical histogram scan again, going into that blur grayscale. So this is kind of giving sort of like the variation where it's actually going to be more clumping and where it's not so clumpy, as you can see there. So that's going into the slope blur grayscale. I'm rotating that around a bit to give it some variation. That's then getting blended into here, and I've got an invert grayscale coming from there. Now what I believe this is doing, so that's going in there. If you can just see, I don't know if you can see, it's just showing where the actual grout would go. You can just, I don't know if you can, yeah, you probably see it better there. It's just an invert grayscale, which is a mask. So it's just masking in where I want that grout to go in between the bricks. So white you see it, black you don't. So you can see, you can, but I don't want it to be too much because I just want to get enough that it doesn't stick out too far and it's quite subtle, as you can see within the grout area. So there we go, so now when we click on this blend, we can see we're starting to build in all the damage, and we've got the surface damage, we've got the larger damage, and we've got the grout. Now we want to add a bit of variation into that grout, because you'll find on perhaps old bricks or whatever there's some larger grout stones. So this is based off Rogelio's rock test, which is the rock generator, which you'll find on the blog as well, which I'll link to at the end. So that's the rock test. So that's just another substance, in effect, another graph that I've referenced into here, and I'm using this shape within to output that into a splatter node. So as I say, check out the other tutorial to show you how to do these rocks, because that's a completely separate tutorial in itself. and you'll see it goes into this splatter node here. What a splatter node does, it kind of randomizes that shape, so it's actually spreading that shape out. All these little dots is the same copy of that all the way around, and just giving it some randomization, different luminance. So some of the bigger stones will stick out more than the others, as you can probably see. That's then going from there into the blend again. So now I'm blending from here where we just had fine grout. I'm now going to blend in the larger stones, and again I only want them to show within the grout area, so I'm using magical histogram scan again here, and I'm dragging that into here to invert it, because this is actually coming from here. So if I do change one of these different brick sizes, it'll update that, and then anything from that point will change as well, so I don't have to worry about these masks at all. So then we've got an invert grayscale, so that's inverting there. So where it's white you'll see it. So yep, we want to see these stones, and that's going into there with a blend opacity of 1. So it's going to just be an opacity of 1, but it's on add linear dodge, okay, because you can't change the opacity if you're actually inputting something into the opacity slot itself. It's only going to take whatever is there. You could change the amount of white by using a levels command and perhaps taking out some of the white so it's less harsh, but you can't use the opacity slider once you have something in there. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with it there. I'm going to start to create my normal map. So simple way of doing this is just height normal blender. So if I type in normal in here, it gives you all the things that I've highlighted with a normal. So I want a height normal blender, because in effect I've made a height mask there, a height map even. So I'm just going to grab that, I'm going to drag that into the height normal blender, and then this is just a normal color here, just a 128 color 255. That's just going into there, so I'm going to dock that. And then with this we can change the format of the actual normal, so you can either make it DirectX or OpenGL. If we go to materials default edit, you can see at the moment DirectX is false. I'm working in OpenGL, so I know that I want to make sure that this is at OpenGL, even this one, sorry, and then I can just change the intensity of the normal map, so I can take it away or I can start to add it in. So as you can see, it's really quick, and if you're worried about normalization, you can add a normalize at the end, but normally it's fine. Okay, so just give it, so say, I don't know, 3 on the scale there, and then I've just got one more height coming in, because I wanted these larger damages, these damage large, to have a little bit more oomph, in effect, a bit more strength, and I wanted to control the amount of strength as well. So that's then going into the height normal blender again. The normal's coming from here into there, and then that's mixing in with this height. Double click, make sure we're on OpenGL, and it's not a strong intensity. I can really make it strong, but I don't want to do that. I'm just using it just to give a bit more effect into these damaged areas. You could leave it at 0 if you wish, but it gives you an option. And then at the end there's the normal, and as I say, if you're worried about normalization, you can just grab a normalize, plug that in, and there you go, clamps your values down. And then I've got an output for height, and if you need to add in another output, you just hit the space bar and then go to output. Gives you an output there, click on add item, and then I chose height, and then I just put height in the identifier, height in the label. As you can see, height in the label, and then it's part of the group material. So as you can see, that's in the group material, that's in group material. So you want to make it, you won't see it, because if you right click view outputs in 3D, if it's not in the material group, it won't come up. So you want to make sure everything's in the same group. So what I've got from there then is I've got myself a bricks generator. So if I want to change that brick again, there you go, and it's going to take in all of those damages and everything. And then if I want to change it again, let's change it again, and there we go, we've got a different type of brick. So that's great. So if I just quickly go back to the generator that's actually got the colour, if I go to that, this is the generator area again. The reason it's not, I've not just pulled in, for example, I could just pull in a brick generator like that and then just use the outputs from there, is this is work in progress and I'm just trying things out, and I just wanted to do some colorization. But the way that you do it is go up there, grab a generator in and start coloring it up from there. But if we just look quickly, if we look at the colorization I've got on there at the moment, say I wanted to change those bricks, the colorization will go with it. So there you go. So it's still keeping the grout where the grout color wants to be, and it's keeping the larger bricks where the larger bricks want to be. Again, let's do it on this one. There you go. And as you can see, there we are. And what I'm doing with the grout is, because I've got all these different masks, such as the mask there for damage large, I can just drag that across. Let's follow this white line all the way across, grout colour, and we can just start adding in different colours. In fact, I think damage colour went into here. So it's going into here, and then that's being used as a mask, so I can control that I'm only wanting to work on the actual damage section, as you can see there, rather than anything else. And that's how you can split things out, and it makes it easy. And then what you could do is create the roughness, melness, and then if you want to do some fine tweaks, you could import this into Substance Painter, and then just go to town on a more of a bespoke texture and really work into there, and that's it. And it's as simple as that. Once you start making these generators here, once you've got a generator, most of the hard work's done. Then it's just purely about texturing and having a bit of fun and experimenting from there. Again, my name is Richard Piper Pipes, and my website's at richardpipespiper.com. If you've got any questions or queries, please make me aware. I've also started working, as I say, on a blog, and I'm adding content to there, so you'll find a lot more tutorials that I find, and what Rogelio finds he'll be putting on there as well. So I'll put a link in the description below, and if you're watching this from the blog, thank you for visiting, and hopefully we'll get some more things in there soon. So this has been a Substance Snippet, and I hope you enjoyed it, and if you've got any questions, just send me a message. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again. Goodbye.